Welcome back to the Wrestling Mindset Podcast. I'm Gene Zanetti, your coast-to-coast mindset coach, bringing you the best available wrestling-specific mindset information anywhere in the world. Wrestling Mindset. Thank you guys so very much for joining us with another great podcast. We're constantly pumping out great information for you, and I wanted to let everyone know that we've taken things to the next level. We've released a do-it-yourself program, the full Wrestling Mindset program, all the worksheets, all the exercises in a simple do-it-yourself format. We've also created different bundles for those of you looking for specifically mental toughness or aggressiveness or peak performance. We made it very simple. It's so easy to use. Go to the show notes, click at the bottom of the show notes. There's a link there. Make sure you sign up and buy it today. Great information. Make sure you capitalize, and we hope you enjoy the show. Mindset makes the difference.
Knowing who you are and your boundaries of behavior. I've said this many times. I honestly believe this is the most important mindset lesson that I could ever give you. You need to know who you are, and you need to know your biggest boundaries for your behaviors, different barriers and resolutions to overcome those boundaries for ourselves. Okay, so let's start off with who we are. When we're competing in sports, we're warriors. So if we want to be great warriors, we want to take a lesson from history. Who are some of the greatest warriors? We look at the U.S. military. We look at the Spartans. We look at the samurai. We look at gladiators. We look at Aztecs, the Apache, all these different people in history, all these great warriors. What do they have in common? They know what they believe, and they're willing to die for it. Those two things. They know what they believe, and they're willing to die for it. That's so important because in sports, one of our biggest barriers to success is overcoming that fear of losing and making mistakes. And what goes along with that also is other people laughing at us, other people looking down at us, other people's opinions, right? So the most important thing we could do is identify who we are. What do we believe? So exercise one is writing that down, taking a moment and thinking of that. Who are you? What are you about? Go back to your faith. Go back to your religion. What are you about? What do you live for? What are your values? Who are you? A lot of people just don't take time to think about that, especially at a younger age. I'm here to tell you, you're not too young. And you're not too old either if you're someone on the other end of the spectrum. It doesn't matter where you're at in life. Take time right now to figure out who you are and what do you believe. Because that becomes more important than your success or your failure or how other people view you, who you are. And once you have this lesson down, you start to realize that whether you succeed, whether you don't succeed, you're still the same person. It sounds so basic, but so many people don't have this lesson down. I've looked at Olympic champions, I've looked at professional athletes, I've looked at some of the top high school athletes, and what they say is even if they don't accomplish their goals, they're still the same person. They still have the same beliefs, they still have the same values. That's exactly the attitude you want to have. If you have a shaky identity, look at the Hollywood stars, look at even some of the richest, most successful people, some of the best athletes, drugs, depression, suicide or suicidal. It's because they don't know who they are. My goal for you is for you not only to accomplish your goals, but to be very happy in the process. The only way we're going to do that is if we know who we are and what we stand for. So if my identity is riding on my success, I'm going to be very scared when I compete. Think about that. If your identity is based on whether or not you win or lose, or whether you get into a certain school, or what kind of car you drive, or if you get this job, you're going to be scared when you're in that interview, when you're in that competition, when you're speaking in front of those people. So your identity has to be secure. You have to have a secure identity. That's so important. That's true mental toughness. That's what all those great warriors have in common. They know who they are. And because they know who they are, they know their code, they know their creed, they know their beliefs. Now they're willing to put it on the line. And if they die in combat, they die in combat. They went down fighting for what they believed in. Okay, so if they could overcome the fear of death, we could overcome the fear of losing, of making mistakes, and of other people judging us in a negative way. It starts with our identity. So what I want you to do, first exercise, write down who you are. What are you about? What are your values? What are your deepest held beliefs? Go back to your faith. Start asking yourself the difficult questions. Most people don't. Don't get caught up in video games, social media, and TV until you really answer yourself this. Because once you have this down, everything becomes a lot easier. True mental toughness really does begin with this exercise on this particular lesson right now. So take a moment to do that. Pause the video. Now that we're back, We want to make sure we take that list of our values, and then on a regular basis, you want to review this. So ideally, on a daily basis, you'll revisit these values, you'll revisit these beliefs to help really ingrain that information into your mind. Okay, it's important that we know who we are and what we believe. Now we need to make sure we remind ourselves of what we believed. The simplest thing I could think of is at church on a weekly basis, we always say the creed of what we believe as Catholics, right? That's what the church does because they're reminding themselves of what they believe. And that's why the martyrs over time have gone to death for their faith, because they know who they are, they know what they believe, okay? In other areas of life, people do the same thing. Martial arts dojos, they go through their code before they even go through their practice. The military, they have this also. They know what they believe. They know what they stand for. I think back to A Few Good Men, where they say unit, core, God, and country, right? If you didn't see that movie, but that's what they talk about. And they know what they believe. They know who they are. To them, that's what it means to be a Marine. You need to know what it means to have your personal beliefs and then review them on a regular basis. So I want you to write down something you're going to do on a regular basis, ideally a daily basis, to reaffirm your beliefs. Even if it's just reviewing this paper every single day, so you could remind yourself who you are and what you stand for. Burn this message into your mind. Mental reps. We understand how repetitions work for strength training. We understand how repetitions work for technique training. Now for our mindset, we need to get the mental reps, most importantly for who we are and what we believe. Take a moment, write that down, pause this video now. And we're back. Now that we have the positive aspects of who we are, what we believe, and we're reviewing it on a regular basis, we want to take it another step further. Now we want to focus on maybe the negative aspects in terms of what's holding us back. What are our boundaries for behavior? And I like to really put you in these kind of situations before you get out there, because if you get into a tempting situation, if you put yourself in an environment and you haven't prepared adequately for how you're going to handle this, you're going to be in big trouble. Because sometimes the peer pressure is too high. You find yourself in a bad spot, you get caught up in the excitement, you do things that you regret later. So I want to put you in some common situations that you're going to find yourself in, especially as the years go on. So knowing your boundaries for behavior on drinking alcohol, right? You're in a situation, you're around people who are drinking, what do? For me, I remember I used to always tell people, I would say, I don't drink anything stronger than milk. I had a canned go-to phrase. So my friends would offer me alcohol, I would say, I don't drink anything stronger than milk, right? One of my other friends I know, so now this was just me because that was my personal beliefs. I didn't want to do that. Okay, so I had a go-to phrase. So I never felt as awkward when I was in those moments because it was pre-planned. Now I have another friend I know who struggled. He was an alcoholic. So he had this also. They taught him this at Alcoholics Anonymous. He had a go-to plan when people would offer him alcohol. He would always just say, I'm all set. And I heard many times people ask him if he wanted to drink, and he would say, I'm good, I'm all set. That was his go-to. So what's your go-to? Now, maybe it's okay. Maybe you're of age. Maybe you're an athlete and you can drink alcohol. You still need to know where you cut yourself off. Because if we don't have that limit to how many drinks we're going to have, you get into that environment, it's always easy to take another and to take another. So maybe you tell yourself, I cut myself off at 2 drinks. And maybe for you, it's like during the season, you don't drink at all. Well, have that planned and also have maybe a go-to phrase that you have if you need that, right? That'll go a long way. Also, know your boundaries for behavior on smoking, on dipping, tobacco, drugs. What do you absolutely say no to at all costs? Right? You have to know that. You don't want to wait till you get into the environment to make that decision. And then even on simpler situations that we have here, what time you're staying up till when you're going out with your friends? What time do you cut yourself off where you go back home? What time are you going to bed at? Relationships, where do you draw the lines? With our faith and morals, we need to know that sometimes we have to cut ourselves off at a certain point. What is that point? Are you ready to handle those situations when the time comes? Okay, and the same thing with a girlfriend or your significant other cutting into workouts. If you know you're going to have to get certain workouts in, at what point do you tell them and have that conversation with them that I have to get these workouts in, and then we could hang out on the side different days? So just have those boundaries for behavior. Plan it before you get into the situation. What other situations do we have? Is it staying up late, dating, and friendships? A lot of us sometimes have friends that maybe they don't support us on our way to our goal. Thinking about it. How are we going to deal with those situations? At what point do we say no? At what point do we say yes? So just write it down. Have a plan before you go into any environments that could possibly hurt you or throw you off. Go by the past. What are situations in your life that have thrown you off in the past? What people have thrown you off in the past? What environments have thrown you off in the past? These are some of your barriers between you and your goal. And they might run counter to your faith and morals. They probably do. Have a plan before you get in those situations again. A lot of situations you can avoid. And write that down too. If these are certain situations you can avoid, write down, I avoid these situations, these circumstances, these environments, and these people. But sometimes you're not going to be able to avoid these circumstances. What are you going to tell yourself in those moments? Do you need a go-to phrase? So put that down. So pause the video right now and have a moment and put down those boundaries for behavior, and then we'll move on to the next exercise. And we're back. So now with our boundaries of behavior, I want you to think about what are the biggest areas that slow us down. So similar to what we did before, but instead of breaking it down for each one of those different areas, I want you to just go straight to what is your biggest struggle area. Maybe it's sleep, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's friendships or relationships, maybe it's bad environments. So write that down. Identify this on the next exercise. Which environment, which people tends to slow you down the most? What is your biggest barrier? Write it down. And then for the final exercise, what I want you to do is write down a good resolution. What are you going to do to overcome that boundary area? So if it's going to sleep at a certain time, making sure that you come home at a certain time, making sure you have, an alarm that goes off in your phone that's going to remind you at this time you got to start coming back. So have the barriers and then also have resolutions to overcome that. This is really goal setting and mental toughness and really the whole picture at its finest. This mental toughness week too, like I said, I just can't say enough about how important this lesson is. You need to know who you are, what you believe. You have to know you have to know what you're going to do in certain problem situations that we all encounter. You need to identify your biggest barriers, and then you also need to know what are the good resolutions you have and ways to overcome these barriers. Again, some of the top athletes, some of the most successful people, they fail not because they don't have enough talent, but because they don't have this exact worksheet, this exact exercise under control. They don't know who they are. They get pulled too much by the crowd. They don't plan ahead what they're going to do when they're in these situations of peer pressure or times of laziness or times of boredom. They don't have a plan. We don't want you to fall into that trap. Don't be like the people who have all those talents that, they could have been this if they didn't fall into all this other garbage. You're going to be better than that. You're going to rise above it. Do this lesson, and again, this has got to be on an ongoing basis where you're reaffirming your faith, you're reaffirming your beliefs, you're reaffirming your values. If you get this down, this exercise down, believe me, the rest of this program is a breeze. Mindset makes the difference.